Today, I'm going to be answering the internet's top 20 financial questions. The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered financial, investment, tax, or legal advice. I am not a licensed financial professional. Always consult a qualified licensed professional before making any financial decisions. What is a Roth IRA? Good question. Good starting point. I wouldn't start investing into a Roth IRA until all high interest debt is gone. Above 8 or 10%, I wouldn't really start investing into a Roth until even 7% or more, even 6. I mean, I would focus on my cash flow from debt because I know it's taking out of my monthly budget and get debt paid before I even invest. I'd also have a fully funded emergency fund. If I were starting over again and say I had student loan debt above 7% and no emergency fund, the first thing I'm doing is building an emergency fund of a few $1,000s, and then I would start just aggressively attacking my student loan debt that had a high interest, and I would be living in a small apartment, or I would probably be renting a room in a cheap area. I would be cooking at home. I'd be doing all these things to get that debt gone. Once it's gone, I'd take my foot off the gas a little bit, and then I'd focus on increasing just simple luxuries like going and eating out more, or starting to fully fund my emergency fund. So once I have 3 months of my living expenses, then I would go into investing into a Roth IRA, and probably not until then. This is just what I would do. That being said, what is a Roth IRA? A Roth IRA is a tax benefit account. Roth, I believe, actually comes from the senator who wrote the legislation to create the Roth IRA. There's also a Roth 401k. I'm not sure if they're going to get into it. If you hear Roth, you're going to get this tax benefit. It's similar for the IRA and the 401k. If you don't know, a 401k is through your employer. A IRA, you get on your own through an institution like Vanguard. It's like a savings account at a bank. Similar, not the same, but similar in the sense that to set it up, kind of like an online savings account, you would just type in Vanguard, open Roth IRA, you give it your personal details like you would a bank, and it will create an account with an account number. And it'll say Roth IRA. And then you add money to that account. And then on that same app, you can go look for mutual funds and things like that. You can go find the Vanguard target date retirement fund, or you can find the S&P 500 index and buy them through that account. That's how you do it. What it is, though, is you pay taxes that day. But you never pay taxes again. So if I got $5,000 set aside after a year that I've been putting into my Roth IRA, let's make it $6,000 for simple math. If I take $500 a month for 12 months, at the end of the year, I'll have $6,000 in my Roth IRA in my Vanguard mobile app, invested in, say, the S&P 500 index. When I do my taxes, like on TurboTax, I will pay taxes on that $6,000. It's considered ordinary income, and I'll pay my effective tax rate on that $5,000. So once I sell it, or when I sell it in retirement, when I'm 60, 70 years old, I no longer pay taxes on that. All my taxes were paid that day. I transferred it into my Roth IRA and paid my taxes for that tax year. Excuse me, I'm so sorry for that. I get $6,000, and maybe I'll send it to my Roth IRA, or maybe I'll have like an automatic withdrawal where it will pull money out of my operating account and go into the Roth IRA. And when I go and file my taxes, my employer should have been withholding my taxes out of every paycheck. So I'll do my TurboTax as usual. I'll declare it there in TurboTax that I contributed this amount of money, and I'll pay taxes on that money in that tax year. And if I sell it in 2066 for way more than it's worth in 2026, all of that gain, all that money is mine. I owe no money. And the same tax benefits go for the Roth 401k in your employer, from your employer. A lot of people don't know about the Roth 401k. They simply know the 401k, which is also called traditional 401k. Like if you get into the weeds of personal finance, you'll hear them referred to as traditional 401k, Roth 401k, traditional IRA, Roth IRA. Through a company like Vanguard, set up on your own, on a mobile app on your phone probably, set up by your employer. 4 different kinds of accounts. The traditional 401k is different than the traditional 401k is different than the Roth 401k. The traditional IRA is different than the Roth IRA. Okay, we'll get to traditional in a bit, I'm sure. I bet it's on this list. But when we're looking at Roths, you pay your taxes today in this tax year, you don't pay it again. Traditionals, real quick, 401k, IRA, not Roth, just regular plain Jane 401k or IRA through employer and Vanguard. You don't pay taxes on it that day. But way down the line in 2066, when it's sold, you pay taxes on it as ordinary income. I hope that explains Roth well. What is a Roth IRA? Next question. Perfect. What is a 401k? So 401k, I believe like if you had the tax code right in front of you and you opened it up and you went down to section 401, that's like the section of tax benefits through employers for employees to defer taxes today and pay it in the future. That's how 401k gets its name, I'm pretty sure. 401 section K, IRS tax code. I'm pretty sure that's right. Doesn't really matter. I'm so sorry for the coughs. 401k. I went over it a bit pretty well. It's just through your employer, a retirement account. You often elect it through like your employee portal to contribute a certain amount of money or a certain amount of percentage every month into a fund. Say a Vanguard Target Index fund, like Target Index 2055, the year someone plans to retire. And it takes care of the rest of selecting what they think is the right investments for you. So you have this 401k, and it might just take $300, $400, $800 out of your paycheck, every paycheck, and put it into your employee sponsored fund. It is different than the Vanguard in the sense that it's an employee portal thing. I will say 401ks typically have a match, so it's really good to get that match. Even if you know without a shadow of a doubt that you want to put your money in a Roth IRA, I really don't think it's worth it. Like if I had the option and I really wanted to go Roth IRA, I wouldn't do that until I've gone to my 401k, maybe ask the fund advisor or HR manager if I needed more clarity of how much do I need to put in to get the employer match, and how much will they match to? And they might say 1%. Like, Brian, if you put in $500 a month, we'll give you $500 too. That's a bit of a lot. We'll use it anyway. It's just an example. But they're like, Brian, if you give $500 a month into your 401k, we'll give you $500. I'm taking that money all day, baby. Like 100% risk-free return day one is like unheard of in finance and investing world. It really only exists with the 401k match. they generally are like vested. Therefore, to keep that $500, I might have to stay with the company for 3 years or 5 years. So make sure you ask them as well, hey, when's my investment period where like this contribution is 100% mine? 401k through the employer. I'm not going to pay taxes on it in that tax year. So if I'm putting $500 in every month into my 401k, after 12 months, I'll have $6,000. When I go on TurboTax, it'll be on there still and I'll still elect it, but I won't pay taxes on it. I'm not subject to that tax in that tax year. It will reduce my taxable amount. So if I have $60,000 in income that I'm going to pay taxes on by electing that, it's going to take $6,000 out and I only pay taxes on $54,000. But when I sell it way in advance, like 2066, whatever I sell it for is ordinary income tax. I'm taxed at that tax rate. Hope that helps. I really don't want to get too hung up on each topic because I'm going to be here for a while to get to 20 questions. I'm also going to give you the ChatGPT answer as well. An employer-sponsored retirement plan that lets you invest money for retirement, often with employer matching contributions. And for the answer, ChatGPT's answer for our first question, what is a Roth IRA? It's saying a retirement account where you contribute after-tax money and qualified withdrawals are tax-free in retirement. That's a really good point. So with a Roth IRA, going back to question 1, what is a Roth IRA? They're mentioning this tax-free withdrawal. Qualified withdrawals are tax-free in retirement is what it said. And qualified withdrawals are tax-free in retirement. Going back to that $6,000 example, going back to question 1 into Roth IRAs, because I know this gets confusing. If I want my $6,000 back, I can take it back at any point without penalty or taxation. So in year 2026, I made $60,000, let's say, and I saved $6,000 and put it in my Roth IRA. And when I did my taxes on TurboTax or whatever that year, I elected that I put $6,000 into a Roth IRA over here, not with the employer, but on my own. I put $6,000 into my Vanguard Roth IRA. When I do TurboTax that year, I will make sure to elect, hey, I put $6,000 into a Roth IRA, and it will tax me on that $6,000. This is important because that money, since it's already taxed, is my money. So if I want what I put in, my contributions, that $6,000, I can take that out at any point in time, and there's no penalty, there's no further taxes because I've already paid taxes on it. This is a huge, massive difference than a 401k or an IRA. A traditional 401k or a traditional IRA, if you take that money out at any point before the age 59 and a half, you will be penalized. You will pay a penalty. You also will pay taxes immediately on the amount you pull out. So, Roth IRA has a huge advantage that if you ever need that money, you're able to take the contributions, and that's important as well. So hang with me for this one a little while longer, but if we had $6,000 that we paid our taxes on and put it into our Roth IRA, and let's say the market did 10% in that same year, and I made $600, right? I made $600 in gains in the stock market. So I have what I contributed, 6 grand, plus my 600 in gains, for a total of $6,600 total balance. What this will look like is 6 grand in, pay taxes on, can take it out at any point without penalty or taxes. $600 in gains. $6,600 total balance. So say in 2 years' time, if I, for whatever reason, don't have an emergency fund, say I had a massive emergency, was out of work for months, depleted it, whatever, no emergency fund, and I need to sell these investments to live off or whatever, and it has this $6,600 balance, if I take that $600 out, the gain, I haven't paid taxes on it yet. So I'm going to have to pay taxes on it. And that's not part of the deal with, what was passed by law. So I'm going to pay a penalty as well. Just like the 401k or the traditional IRA, if I touch the gains, anything above what I put in, anything above the $6,000 I put in, it's subject to penalty and taxes. So remember that. Also brings me to a further point of have an emergency fund first. That's why I said in the beginning, I would definitely have an emergency fund before going into a Roth IRA, because if I need money, I go to my emergency fund. I don't go to my Roth IRA because it's worth $6,600 in this example. But if the market was bad, let's say the market was bad that year, and I don't have any gains at all. As a matter of fact, I have losses of $600. So I only have $5,400 in my account, and that's going to be a $600 loss total. So I lost $600. I only have $5,400. And I have no emergency fund, and I got fired because my company no longer exists because the market's crashing. I have to sell to survive and lock in that $600 loss. So it's another good reason to have an emergency fund, is to not have to sell stocks and investments and mutual funds in a market crash to survive. That's a long-winded rant. We're going to keep on moving and grooving, because that was only question 2 of 20. What's the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA? We've kind of already gone over it. In summary, Roth IRA, you pay tax in that tax year. You never pay tax on it again. You can pull the contributions out, tax and penalty free, but you cannot pull the gains out, tax and penalty free. Traditional IRA, you do not pay taxes in that tax year. You pay taxes as ordinary income tax. What you generally pay when you get your paycheck is ordinary income tax, ordinary income. You pay that way off in the future. Say if I retire in 2066 and I sell it and I pull my money out and I'm over the age of 59 and a half, whatever I pull out, I pay taxes on it as if I was getting like a paycheck. Ordinary income taxes. Roth, pay it that day, don't pay taxes later. Traditional, don't pay taxes that day, but I pay taxes way later. What is a stock? What is a stock? Good question. I love investments. I love talking investments. All right, I'm going to make a stock certificate. I'm going to make a stock certificate for the Eraser Company. So if I want to start a company, one thing I can do is I can create an entity, I can create a corporation, and I can issue stocks. So I'm going to have an example where I'm going to create this eraser company, and I'm going to make erasers. So we will call it the Eraser Co. We're going to issue 100 shares. Generally, these corporations like McDonald's, whatever, they create millions of shares, or at least hundreds of thousands of shares for an example, a simple example, I'm going to make 100 shares of stock, and they're going to be worth $1. $1. This gets a little more complex, but we're going to stay out of it when we talk about face value of stock and market value of stock. We're not going to get into that. That's a little further advanced. But it'll be worth 1 share, and we're going to get into something called dividends, though. It will pay a 1% dividend. So this is my eraser making machine. It's no longer a pencil sharpener. This asset makes erasers, and it costs $100. All right. I want to start an eraser company. I create a corporation, create 100 shares of stock for $1. So when I sell all these, I'll have $100. I take my stock, sell it, get $100. I go buy this eraser machine, eraser making machine. It spits out erasers. I take my erasers to the stores. People buy them. I make money. And that's how the company makes money. That's how the company grows. Now, who owns this company? The answer is whoever owns the stock. Stock is direct ownership of an asset. Of a company. The company owns the asset. The stockholders own the company. All right, that's a stock. It pays a dividend. What is a dividend? A dividend pays you for owning the stock. So in this example, 1 share of stock will get 1 penny a year. Doesn't sound like a lot, but generally people aren't walking around buying $1 stocks. Dividends are nice. I like dividends. I personally cannot advise at all. If I could advise, I would say, like, I would never really recommend someone buy single shares of stock. They have these things called ETFs and mutual funds. They're kind of the same. For this video, they're essentially the same. A mutual fund is generally managed by someone to achieve a certain goal, like international stocks or dividend producing stocks or no dividend capital gain growth stocks. But I'll give you an example. This is my eraser company. I'm going to get rid of my asset. The eraser making machine goes away, and I have this eraser, a pencil company, a mechanical pencil company, another mechanical pencil company. I have a pen company. I have a clickable pen company, another clickable company. I have all these companies. So if this is my eraser making company, I also have all these different companies. Not only do I have pen and pencil and eraser companies, I have tech companies. I have phone making companies. I have car manufacturing companies, food companies. I have every single company, really, every industry, healthcare, tech, in my hand. In our eraser making company, I have all these companies in this cup. This cup would be the ETF. So say these are the largest 500 companies in the US stock market, the S&P 500. And I bought a S&P 500 ETF for $1. For $1. This costs $1. I'm going to have, a small little piece of every single company of the largest 500 companies in the S&P 500, okay? They're not all going to cost out $1. They're going to be less ownership, but I'm going to have the same amount of stock value. Instead of buying $1 worth of a single company, all right? Sorry, this is an eraser company. Let me find my eraser. Instead of having $1 in one company that makes erasers that could go bust, making my investment worthless, I'm going to have $1 in all these 500 companies. So if this goes bust, I still have 499 companies. The only difference is I'm going to have like half a penny in every single company worth $1. All right, where did I go? I lost my questions. What is a stock? That answers that. A stock is ownership. Owns companies. Stockholders own companies. Real quick, back to this, because I'm sure there's going to be someone in the comments that's like, it's not equally 500 bits of each stock. They're right. It's really too advanced. I wouldn't get into it, but I know someone might comment. Bigger companies get bigger shares. So you might get 20 cents in Tesla and 1/10 of a cent in some random food company. It's not worth getting into the weeds about. I just think there might be some guy on his keyboard in the comment section. Anyway, moving on. What is a bond? Good question. We're going back to my eraser making company. So you have stocks that we went over. Stocks are ownerships. And then you have bond. A bond is another financial instrument that a company can use to raise money. A bond is a loan. A bond is a form of debt. So we will have bond. When you hear bond, think IOU. You ever borrowed some money from a friend and they're a really good friend, you know they wouldn't have a problem with it. They're not there, so you write a little note like, hey, borrowed $5, I owe you $5. You leave it in their drawer where you found the money. You know, a bond is the same thing. A bond is an IOU. I owe you money. So we'll use another dollar as well. So $1. And we're going to do the same rate. It's going to pay 1%. A bond doesn't pay a dividend. It pays interest, also called yield. But we're sticking to interest. A bond pays interest. I hope I spelled interest right. Bond, IOU one. And they have a term in years. 1 year or more. Anything under a year is generally called a bill, and it's from the U.S. government. We won't get there. Bond, that's a good point though. A bond can be sold by a government or a company. In this example, we're going with a company. But you can also buy bonds from the government. They're called like a risk-free rate because the government has the right to like make money or get money from the Federal Reserve. Therefore, it can always pay its bonds. But in this example, we're going to use a bond for a corporation. Corporation, asset. Corporation owns the asset. Bond holders lend money to the corporation to buy assets. Bond, $1, 1% interest. So say you, the investor, were to buy this bond for $1 for 1 year. Did I put a year on there? 1 year. 1 year. Bond. You buy this for $1. You give your dollar to the eraser company. They give you this piece of paper. They have your dollar and 99 other dollars from 99 other people. And they take that money, that $100, they buy an asset owned by the corporation. This asset spits out erasers like crazy. The erasers are sold. That money, some of it, will be used in 1 year to pay back the bondholders that they owe, IOU. So they will be given $1 plus 1 penny in interest. That's a bond. It's a loan. Bondholders do not own the company. They do not own the asset. The company owns the asset. The stockholders own the company. Bondholders lend money to the company. Company pays that money back plus interest. A little too far advanced, more than you probably need to know, but If the company went into bankruptcy, generally the bondholders have the rights to any assets, not the stockholders. The stockholders own the company. They failed, they blew up. The stockholders generally get nothing. The bondholders come and they get first rights to assets. More than you need to know. What's next? What is an ETF? I'm just going to use Google for this one. An exchange-traded fund that holds many investments and trades like a stock. Mutual fund, ETF, for the most part, just think of them the same as this one thing. An ETF, the S&P 500 ETF, or a mutual fund that tracks, the S&P 500, think of them as the same for the most part. There are differences, but we're not going into them. We're just not for this video. Just to not leave curiosity, like you can buy an ETF that tracks oil if you just want to invest in oil or in salt or in sugar. It's just not worth going into. For the most part, if you bought a S&P 500 and ETF or a mutual fund that tracks the S&P 500, the top largest 500 companies in the domestic US stock market, you're buying this glass. You're not buying that stock that I ripped up and threw over here. You're not buying the stock of one company. You're buying a tiny sliver of that stock of the 500 companies in the cup. So you buy the glass. In the glass, you get a tiny little piece of every single company. So you still have stock in these companies. It's just it comes into one package to you. Here is the S&P 500. 500 tiny little shares of stock, ownership of all these companies in one product that costs, let's say, $1. Boom, ETF. Electronically traded fund. Mutual fund, electronically traded fund. They're both funds. All right. They also generally have like management fees, and it's very important to pay attention to that. Please look at like the Vanguard S&P 500 expense ratio. That's what it's called. Because I think Vanguard's is like 0.5% expense ratio. And that's so important. So please look at your expense ratios. Maybe use the Vanguard app as a benchmark because they tend to have very good expense ratios. That's very important. If you made 8% and your expense ratio is 2, you're only getting 6. If you have 8% and your expense ratio is 0.5, you're going to keep 7.5. So that's important. What is a mutual fund? I'm not answering it. It's a dead horse that's been beaten. How much money do I need to start investing? ChatGPT, many brokers allow you to start with as little as $1 to $100. It's not how much you need. So I think what they're getting at is how much money do I need to start investing? It's not like you need 10 grand or 5 grand or $1,000. It's like how much you show up with every single like paycheck. That's what matters the most. It's more about cash flow. And I'm going to get to cash flow right after I take a short break. I'll be right back. 2 seconds. And we're back. I looked at the video as well. It looked a little dark, so I opened that window. Hope we get a little light. Cash flow. So on a paycheck, say you check your online portal, you see your pay stub. A lot of times at the top, it says like net pay. Net pay. And we'll say it's, I don't know, $4,300. Underneath that is normally like a box, and it might say gross pay or total pay or just pay. So pay, and let's say we make $5,000 a month. We make $60,000 a year. Underneath that, it might say insurance. It might say, what other deductions would you have? Income tax. income withholding. And we'll just stop there for now. All right. We're not going to go into 401k withholding because we're going to go into this example of just starting investing. All right. So net pay is your pay minus like your health insurance and your income tax withholding from your employer. So we'll say insurance is $400 maybe, minus that out. And then income withholding, we'll say that's another $300 that they withhold from your paycheck, making your net pay $4,300. Okay, so in this example, this is a pay stub. All right. You might see that at the top because employers really just want you to know your net pay because that's what's going to hit your bank account. When you get paid, you'll see $4,300. It's been added to your bank. All right. Can I see through this piece of paper? I can. That helps. That hits your account. 43. If you look at your pay, though, you made $5,000. You made $5,000. Insurance, you paid $400 through your company's health insurance, let's say. And then income withholdings, you paid $300. So you get this $4,300. Your cash flow is that $4,300 minus what you live on. And here's a strong. I'm not going to give recommendations, but this is what I would do. All right. Let's say that I've matched out my 401k and I can no longer get a match and I want to go into a Roth IRA. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take what I'm paid, the $4,300, and I'm going to multiply it. So on my calculator, I type in 4,300. Whoop, that's not 100. I type in $4,300. $4,300. And then I'm going to multiply by 0.2, which is 20%. 20%. I'm going to take 20% of my pay, which is $860. $860. All right. And in this example, we're getting paid once a month, not bi-weekly, just this is a monthly pay. So my net pay is 43. Net pay, 43. Roth IRA is $800. 860 from 4,300. 4,300 minus $860 in my Roth IRA is $3,440. This is going to be for living expenses. So when I talk about cash flow, this is what I'm talking about. Open this up so I can see as well. I get this net pay from this pay stub. I do it backwards. Most people get paid, they pay to live, they pay for their car, they pay for their fast food, they pay for their gas, they pay for their energy drinks, they pay for Walmart items, they pay their rent, and whatever's left over, they'll invest. I pay myself first. I pay my retirement fund first, my Roth IRA. So I'm going to put $860 into that Roth IRA that we already talked about. Living expense, $3,440. That's what I'm left with for the whole month to pay my rent, to pay for my car's gas and insurance, to pay for my groceries. That's what I'm living off of. So I don't think it's a question of how much, where'd that question go? How much money do I need to start investing? It's more about how much can you consistently show up with and invest in. And I'm going to give one more example of this because the stock market goes up and down. It goes up and down like this over a 10-year period. 10 years, And we're going to call this the S&P 500. S&P 500, and we'll even go out on a limb and say ETF. So I've gone to Vanguard, I've bought their S&P 500 ETF, and this is the past 10-year performance, up and down, up and down, up and down. One thing to avoid, if this is what someone was asking of, how much money do I need to start investing, expecting an answer of like 10,000 to invest that day, I would not do that. I'm not going to tell other people what to do. I would not do that, because you run the odds, you run a chance of putting $10,000 in at the top and losing a lot of value, maybe panic selling, or at least having to wait with a lot of anxiety for it to go back up. Going back to my cup, this is my S&P 500 for $1. We'll even call it $860. This is my monthly investment. I've bought $860 worth of the S&P 500. Excuse me. If I put this in at the top and it falls to half its worth, $430, I think, I don't lose any money. I no longer have money. I think people panic because they feel like they're actually losing money, and they're not. I still have every single stock in this cup. I still own it. All right? I no longer have money. I can't lose money unless I sell this and take less money for it than what I paid for it. So if I buy it high and it gets cut in half, I personally would just want to hold it and wait for it to go back up. Also, I might try to invest more and buy more cups of stock for this low price, because it should over time go back up. This is called dollar cost averaging. This is a prime example of what dollar cost averaging can look like. If I show up every month or every paycheck and I put in that money, then I will buy at the absolute low. I will buy on the way up. I will buy on the way back down. I'll buy the bottoms again. I'll buy the tops. I will buy at every little point in time, every paycheck. Every little hash on here is a paycheck where I went to Roth IRA to Vanguard and bought that S&P 500 as an example. And this is called dollar cost averaging. Dollar cost averaging. Put this in a box so you can see it well. Dollar cost averaging, where I show up every paycheck and I put in that $860 in the S&P 500. And the average will be between the highs and the lows. It'll be that solid black line. We avoid putting a big lump sum like 10 grand in at a peak and watching it crash and waiting for it to go back up. Instead, we'll invest over time, should already have an emergency fund established, should be out of bad high interest debt by then, and we're showing up every month putting money in after we've already gotten our 401k match from our employer, the 100% gain same day contribution match. We're doing this. And this is where that would go as well. Our 401k, let's say like I had a 401k from an employer and they offered me the match. I'm going to invest it in their version of the S&P 500 ETF, and I'm going to do it every paycheck. That's dollar cost averaging. So it's not one lump sum of money to answer the question. In my opinion, it's finding the cash flow to consistently put it in every paycheck. What do we have next? I've lost my water. All right. How much money should I pay off debt or invest? We've already covered that. High interest debt, pay it first, and then invest. In my opinion, generally high interest debt should be prioritized before investing heavily. Yeah. I tell you what's another good show to check out is The Money Guy Show. They have great shows. Furthermore, their online tools are really good. They could really help people determine, should they be investing, should they be paying off debt. I highly suggest checking out The Money Guy Show. They're actually a local show here in Franklin. I've met both of them. Really cool, really nice guys. Check out the Money Guy Show. CPA and CFA, really certified. Hey, if you're looking for some of that tax advice, maybe hit up CPA and CFA. My guideline is 15% of your income, though individual needs may vary. I agree for the most part, except for the fact that what I do is more like that 20%. Where'd that cash flow statement go? Oh, it's right here. For me, I would like to do 20%. 25 would even be more stellar. And just as another general like rule of thumb, I think it's considered like your take-home pay should, your housing, whether you're renting or a mortgage, whatever, what you pay for your house or your apartment and all your utilities and insurances for the home shouldn't be more than a third of your paycheck at most. I like 28%. So in that example where I'm making $4,300, I'll multiply that by 0.28, and that gives me $1,200. So probably have a roommate, or I'm someone else's roommate, all bills included, because that $1,200 pays for the rent, pays for the water, pays for the electric, pays for the trash. 0.28 or 28% is a great rule of thumb. I think financial experts go to like up to a third at most, or 30%. And the only reason I mention that is because when you're paying a third or less for all of your housing expenses, rent, trash, insurance, you open up your monthly budget to allow for that 20% or 25% in income investment. When you spend less on housing, you can spend more on investing. Where are we at? What is a credit score? I'm just going to give you ChatGPT's answer. A number that lenders use to evaluate your credit worthiness. If you have a credit card, you have an app. If you have an app, you probably have a section where you can see your credit score. It is how creditors evaluate your ability to pay back a loan. They look at, have you ever had debt before? If so, how did you do? Did you pay on time? How much did you take out and were responsible for? Of the amount that you were authorized to use, say $10,000 on a credit card, did you always use all of it or just some of it? It's mostly like pay your payments on time. It's a track record and it gives you a score. If you want more details, just open up your credit card app, go into your credit score, and then it should like give you a detailed section of how they're giving you that score and what that section is based off of. Like on-time payments, 98 to 100%. Excellent, meaning you never missed a payment, and this contributes to, for example, 50% of your overall score. What is a credit score? It's what lenders like banks use to evaluate your ability to pay a loan back. How can I improve my credit score? Pay on time, keep balances low, and avoid unnecessary new debt. I can't beat that answer, therefore I'm not going to try. How much energy savings should I have? Oh, emergency. I was really confused for a second. How much emergency savings should I have? 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses. Have we gone over that yet? I feel like we've touched on it. In this example, living expenses. Net pay, $4,300. Roth IRA that I invested, $860. I am living on $3,440. Living expenses. I take this number, I multiply it by 3. Gonna try to use a calculator again. $3,440 times 3 equals $10,320 is how much I need for an emergency fund. Times 3 equals $10,320. This is my emergency fund. I have this emergency fund. This is my emergency fund. I have this emergency fund before I start investing. So, if I didn't have an emergency fund, I'm not putting it in a Roth IRA. I'm speaking to myself. I'm not putting it in a Roth IRA. I'm saving this $860 a month every month until I get $10,360. Then I can begin investing. Although personally, I would take the employer contribution match, and then I would save for the emergency fund. Other people might find that not prudent or safe, but I'm taking the 100% guaranteed return, and it's generally only $100 or $200 a month. So I would invest and get that 100% match and get it compounding sooner rather than later. I am one person. I'm supported by my own income. So I have no kids. I'm comfortable with 3 months. If you have a family and they're like 100% dependent on your income, or even 50% dependent on your income, a 6-month, 9-month, or even 1-year emergency fund might be better and have more peace of mind. What is inflation? The rise of prices over time, which reduces purchasing power. There's more money today than there was in 1970s. Like literally, there's more money in circulation today. I'm gonna go pull up the Federal Reserve's money supply real quick. Federal Reserve money supply. Federal Reserve Bank, St. Louis. I'm going to turn on screen record. Command Shift 5. Recording. Am I recording? No. Command Shift 5. Oh, record. Are we recording? We're recording. So this is the Federal Reserve Bank's own statement. And we have what's called the M2 money supply. If we go down here, we have the M1. I'm going to go click on this. What is the M1? Notes. M1 consists of currency outside the U.S. Treasury, Federal Reserve banks, and vaults, and deposits of institutions. Demand deposits at banks, blah, blah, blah. In simplicity, the M1 money supply is the supplied money. That's simple. That's scary. 2020, we went on a bender of a printing. We create money. The Federal Reserve and Treasury create more money. I'm not sure if people know this or not, or it's just not common knowledge. What is this in? Billions of dollars. In 1990, there was $806 billion. By 1995, they had created 1.1 trillion. Before COVID, there was 3.8 trillion. After COVID, there was 17 trillion 638 billion 800 million. This is where we are today. So when you hear things like the stimulus package for COVID, that is in essence the treasury of the U.S. government selling bonds to the Federal Reserve Bank. I need to go find a dollar bill. I'll be back. And I'm back. This is a $5 bill. You're not surprised. I put the paper behind it so you're not seeing through this note. But at the very top, it says Federal Reserve Bank. Federal Reserve Bank. Oh, sorry, note. Federal Reserve. This is a bank note. Federal Reserve note. $5. Federal Reserve Bank note. United States of America. $5. The Treasury sells bonds to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve creates money and gives it to the government. Ugh. The Treasurer of the USA creates bonds, sells the bonds to the Federal Reserve, says, I'll pay you $1 billion. Let's say the stimulus package was, I don't know, $1 billion. $1 billion. Do I still have my bond? Yeah. Still have my bond. This is going to be now a USA government bond. USA government bond for $1 billion. $1 billion. If you think this isn't right, it is. It's crazy to think that they can do this, but they have $1 billion. The treasurer makes this, takes it over to the Federal Reserve, gives it to the Federal Reserve chairman. The chairman then creates $5 billion, gives it to the US government. They do the stimulus package. That's why we have inflation, because there's more money in circulation. If there's only this $5 in this economy, and this was $1, and next year there's 2 of these notes, this is going to go up to $2 to make it equal to the ratio before and after. It gets more complicated than that. I'm not going into it. In essence, real quick, if we get that stimulus check, we have, say the stimulus, they gave every U.S. citizen $5. I take my $5 to the bank. Now I have a phone screen with an app that says balance, $5. My bank, this is my bank. My bank has my $5. They give me a phone screen with the balance of $5. They take $4 of this and they lend it to Joe Schmo to buy this eraser. So Joe Schmo has $4 and I have a balance of $5 that I can spend. So somehow there's like $9 of credit and currency in the economy. That goes into something called like into money supply, but that increases the supply of money as well. I'm not getting into it. Why do we have inflation? That's why we have inflation. What's next? Top 20 financial questions. Hold on. Pen's good. Credit score. What is inflation? The rise in prices over time, which reduces purchasing power. Do I pay taxes on investment gains? Usually yes, but tax treatment depends on type of account and investment. I think what they're getting at is investment gains without selling. I was looking for my phone. I'm recording on my phone. Here's my phone case. Ah! My credit card's on the back and I don't want to show it. On my phone, I'm going to take my credit cards out. Here's my phone. Here's my $5. I got $5 stimulus check. I take it to Vanguard on my phone. I deposit it to Vanguard. I now have $5 on my Vanguard app. I buy the S&P 500, $5 of the ETF of the S&P 500. The day I buy it, it was worth $5. A year from now, this is worth $10. So I put in 5, it's gone up to $10, so I've made $5. I don't owe taxes on this until I sell it. And we're not talking about Roth IRA. We're not talking about 401k. Those are different. We've talked about their tax implications already. This is a regular, normal brokerage account, like Robinhood or something like that. No tax benefits at all. So I bought this for $5. It's worth $10 now. Today, if I check my Vanguard app, my one $5 share of the S&P 500 was worth $5, but today it's worth $10. I don't owe any taxes. Until I sell this to get money back, I don't owe taxes. Generally, for the most part, if I sold it before a year, I owe taxes as ordinary income, which is usually for most people a higher tax rate than what's called long-term capital gains. So if I own this for over a year and it's worth $10 now, and I sell it after a year has passed in a normal brokerage app or a normal brokeraging account, not a tax account like Roth and IRA, Roth and traditional IRA or 401k, just a regular trading app, I will owe, I think 15% is the long-term capital gains rate. So if my ordinary income tax is like 20%, I won't pay 20. If I hold it over a year, I'll just pay 15. That's more than you needed to know. But to answer this question, if you see gains in your stock account, you have to sell it before it to become a taxable event. A good thing to do if you have a stock portfolio and you're selling or you're thinking of selling, contact a tax CPA because they can talk to you about long-term and short-term capital gains rates and something called tax loss harvesting. It's a good question for a tax CPA. See a tax CPA. What is dollar cost averaging? Thank gosh, we've already covered it. We've covered it. That's dollar cost averaging with the little marks. ChatGPT defines it as investing a fixed amount of regular income, little dashes, regardless of market conditions, up or down. Dollar cost averaging. 18. How much house can I afford? A common guideline is to keep housing costs below 28% of gross income. Cool. They used a different number. Let's talk about it. Remember how I said pay was $5,000 and our net pay was $4,300? Gross income is the $5,000. 5,000. When you take a job for an annual salary of 60 grand and you're paid 5,000 a month, that $5,000 your gross income, which is what this is what ChatGPT is saying. A common guideline is to keep housing costs below 28%. So we take $5,000 times that by 0.28 equals $1,400. That's how much you can spend on your house, on water, on trash, on electric, on insurance. That's all of your housing, $1,400. You might be like, Brian, we talked about this earlier, and the number was different. My rule, what I use, is 28% of net pay. 43. So I differed a little. I like my rule better. That's why I use my rule. So yeah, we used a smaller number, so you get a smaller budget. This one was gross income, 60 grand a year or 5,000 a month. What is a high yield savings account? A savings account that pays a higher interest rate than traditional savings accounts. I don't know what the difference between a traditional savings account and a high yield savings account is, but I have my money in Vanguard and I do have this like cash position, just cash, some of it, and it is in like a mutual fund that gets 3.5%. I consider that high yield. I'm gonna answer this a little bit of a different way. Traditionally speaking, bank accounts used to have, or banks used to have checking accounts and savings accounts. And the checking account paid no interest or less, very little interest. The savings account paid higher interest, like 3.5%, like in my Vanguard app. Checking account, they might not pay me any interest at all in exchange for services of their operating account, their bank account, checking account, because money's going in and out, whatever. But if I put it in a savings account, I might get 3.5%. Regular operating account pays almost nothing. Nothing to almost nothing. It might be 0.5% to 0. Savings account might pay like 3%. Difference is I can put money in and out of this as much as I want. And most all high interest savings accounts have a limit. You can only do like 2 or 3 or even no withdrawals without paying them a fee to withdraw the money. So that's something to be cautious of. There's also something called CDs, certificates of deposit. You can buy them at your bank, I'm sure. And it's pretty much like you guarantee not to withdraw that money for a certain amount of time in exchange for a high interest rate. Generally speaking, the longer you lock it up for, the bigger your rate. So you might go to your bank and they might give you a 1-month CD where you give them $100, they'll give you 1% interest and 1% annualized interest. You know what? I'm not getting into CDs. Certificates of deposits, almost no one uses them. I'm not going into them. What else we have? So sorry for that. If you're curious about certificates of deposit, please be advised to go to Chat GPT or YouTube or a licensed financial professional, because me, I love personal finance. Even CDs bore me, certificates of deposit. I used to use them because they had high penalties. So I used to put my emergency fund into certificates of deposit. So that way I just wouldn't impulse spend it because I knew there's a high fee associated with losing it. I just keep it in Vanguard now, cash, mutual fund, money market fund, which is essentially savings account. Okay, I'm moving on from this question. I've stayed on it for way too long. 20, last question. Can I retire with $1 million? It depends on your spending needs, retirement age, and other income sources. Yeah. Can I retire with $1 million? Maybe. Probably not. Maybe. I'll tell you what, we can actually get a better answer than that. $1 million, there's something called the 4% rule. It was 100,000. That's $1 million. Times it by 0.04. If one could live on $40,000 a year, yeah. But just remember, $1 million because of inflation. Where's my T-bill? I've lost my inflation. I folded it up. Because of inflation, 30, 40 years from now, when you retire, $1 million might not do it. 40,000 might not buy you a latte. Anyway, with that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye. I wanted to address a rant, a bit of a rant. It'll probably turn into a rant. That if you're watching this video, you're probably looking for answers to financial questions. Maybe just wondering what to do with finance and investing in general. And that kind of brings me to the point of what I do, what I would do. And it's invest in the things that I know. Like Jim Rogers classically says, invest only in what you know. It was at the time against common advice to invest in gold and silver. I bought gold and silver in like 2014 and 15 and continued to buy because I understood it. So I will not buy things if I don't understand them. Hopefully this video helps give you some clarity, maybe understanding of things, help you out a little bit. But I think there's a lot of common advice that's given that shouldn't be given that can end up wrong. And one classic book that I love is called The Wealthy Barber. I would recommend reading The Wealthy Barber, The Wealthiest Man in Babylon, and The Millionaire Next Door. Those are, if you want a solid, good understanding of things, read those 3 books and you will be well on your way. Listen to them on audio. I think Spotify has free audio books. I would be surprised if one, if not all of them, was on Spotify audiobooks. If you already have a Spotify premium subscription, they might even offer the free subscription. I don't know. But things like buying a house. Everyone's told to buy a house. I was told to buy a house. Everyone was told to go to college and take on student loan debt. I was told to do that. These are classic examples of investments that have turned out poorly for people. So invest in what you know. Take on financial obligations you understand. That being said, that was a bit of a rant. And just for the classic like home example, you know, we're getting this advice from a generation where the average home price compared to salary was much less than it is today. If we look up what was the home price compared to salary in 1970, it was 2.5 times the median annual family income. And today in 2026, it's what? 5 times the typical annual household salary. It's just not the same. And that's life. That's the history of mankind is, decades are different than the decades before and the decades after them. Centuries are different. There was a time where bond investing was prudent, and then they started over time lowering bond prices, and that made the stock markets rise. And everything's kind of cyclical, so stocks might start going down as bonds rise. And we're indebted more than ever. We have more debt in the world, far more than 2008, the crash of '08. We have way more debt now as a average individual, as a country, as a world. So being prepared financially is a very prudent, smart, savvy thing to do. And it's fundamental at its basis. Maybe hard to do, but it is fundamental at its core. Also, I cannot control the stock market. I cannot control the value of my investments. I cannot control like anything really when it comes to the financial markets. What I can control though is my spending habits. And that is like the fundamental equation of wealth. I actually won't write that one out just yet, but I can buy a 5-year-old used car made by a reliable company like Toyota with 90,000 miles on it after it's reached 80%, 70% of its full depreciation and drive that around and save money. I can get a smaller house. I can take on, a smaller apartment is what I meant to say. I can take on a roommate. I can do all these little things that add up to a big thing. And it's all controllable by me. So that, to me, is how financial independence is gained or accomplished. I will say, just like for me, I'm at like well over 1x, excuse me, salary. I think a general rule of thumb is by 30, you should have 1 year's salary saved. I'm past that. And I'm 31. So I have no debt. I've made some good investments. Yeah. So, but I control the controllables. I drive my car is 23 years old. I learned how to work on a car. My car was running rough when I bought it, which is why it was selling cheap. I learned to fix a mass flow air intake and replace a spark plug. And I got a good value. And it's a reliable car. So something like just learning a skill saved me money. Things like renting less livable space saves me money. And that's just what I would push to people more. I had to go on this rant and tangent to be able to answer these questions. I'm so sorry if it's a distraction to the rest of the show, the rest of the episode where I'm answering these questions. But I just didn't want to go into all these things because I feel like the ending intention of a viewer is how to build wealth. And they're looking for that by finding answers to their questions, which is good to get that understanding. But furthermore, I want to recommend those 3 books: The Wealthiest Man in Babylon, The Wealthy Barber, The Millionaire Next Door, and Control the Controllables.